Speaker Kevin McCarthy has directed the House committee to open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. McCarthy says President Biden lied to the American public about his family's business dealings. The White House calls the announcement an example of, quote, extreme politics. McCarthy added the allegations paint a picture of a culture of corruption.
This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. That's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well.
CBS News senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us now. Catherine, before I come back to you, I'd like to play more of what Speaker McCarthy said and just get your reaction on the other side.
Biden used his official office to coordinate with Hunter Biden's business partners about Hunter's role in Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company. It appears that the president's family has been offered special treatment by Biden's own administration, treatment that not otherwise would have received if they were not related to the president.
Catherine, he spoke of abuse of power, obstruction, corruption, all part of what he called serious, incredible allegations. You've covered Hunter Biden extensively. What is he talking about?
Well, let's take it in two parts, Lilia. The first is a reference to internal White House emails that have now been made public by the National Archives. And it's an email exchange from December of 2015 between Hunter Biden's business partner, Eric Schwerin, and senior White House comms official, Kate Bedingfield. And they are exchanging comments or statements that surround Hunter Biden's joining of the board of the Ukraine energy firm Burisma. And the reason Republicans are pointing to these exchanges is that they're asking, why were they even in communication at all about his son's business deals if there was, in fact, this wall between then VP Joe Biden and his son and his brother's business affairs? The second goes to a larger question, which touches on the Justice Department investigation of Hunter Biden. Speaker McCarthy is referring to the allegations that there was preferential treatment that prevented investigators from taking typical steps in that investigation that they say may have led to Joe Biden himself.
And that is something that you have been covering extensively. Now, what do we think, or what do you think was the tipping point here? Because we know that there are still GOP lawmakers who are not supporting an impeachment inquiry. What do you think pushed for him to announce this?
Well, 2 weeks ago, based on my reporting here at CBS News, senior GOP aides told me that the game changer for the House Speaker was, in fact, the testimony from these IRS whistleblowers, and not only this testimony under threat of perjury, but also the records that they provided to the House Ways and Means Committee. Their allegation was that they were blocked, their words, handcuffed from taking steps that might have led to Joe Biden, and they also felt the evidence supported much more significant felony charges, especially in the tax case. And it was that universe of information that really propelled the Speaker to take that extra step to consider an impeachment inquiry. And this comes not in a vacuum. We know that additional records have been provided to the House Ways and Means Committee that could soon vote them out and make them public. And my understanding is that it could be more records like these WhatsApp messages where Republicans said that it seemed clear that Hunter Biden was using his father to pressure one of his business partners.
What you're detailing is, a series of items that, of course, they're going to be looking into if this impeachment inquiry moves forward. The Biden campaign has already responded, calling McCarthy a, quote, Trump campaign super surrogate. What do you make of that response? And do you see the White House, President Biden, the Biden family, being successful at continuing to dismiss this as just a political, I don't want to use witch hunt because that's a Trump term, but a political motivation?
Well, clearly impeachment is almost always political in nature.
Right.
And that statement, they're attacking the messenger, which is a tactic or a strategy that's taken by both parties. What I think stands out to me, Lilia, is that this impeachment inquiry is now on a collision course with the presidential election in 2024. And that also intersects with this federal probe that's ongoing into the president's son. And the timing really matters because the special counsel, David Weiss, has already indicated in filings to the court that he does intend to seek an indictment of the president's son on at least a gun charge before September 29th. So we have a very tight, compressed timeline with all of these events unfolding.
And just quickly, Catherine, talk to me about the significance of an impeachment inquiry for people wondering what kind of power is behind that.
Well, what stands out about this move by the Speaker is that he, at this point, doesn't plan to have a vote, and he has been highly critical of Democrats in the past who didn't have a vote when they sought to impeach President Trump. So he's being criticized as not being true to his statements in the past. What we see here is that the Speaker is stopping short of a vote, and he's pulling together the combined resources of these three Republican-controlled committees. The House Ways and Means, these are the group that brought forward the IRS whistleblowers, then also Oversight and Judiciary. So practically speaking, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have more resources, but it does mean that they can combine forces in a more official way as they begin this very preliminary step that would be needed before deciding to launch an official impeachment proceeding.
Catherine Herridge, thank you.